Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to our next recorded lesson. And I know you guys have been champions at helping me instruct you from far away. So this is our, I think, second or third recorded math lesson. So I know you guys are going to be champs for our guest teacher. I know you guys are going to be able to follow along and do your part in your learning adventure. So I'm going to start off by just kind of explaining a little bit of what it is that we are going to be learning about today. We're going to be learning about decimal place values. We briefly talked about decimal place values back in the fall, back when school first started. It's still fall time. We are going to go back and we're going to review different place values that go along with our decimals. Now, if you remember, you can kind of point to it behind me. Right there, I have a place value chart on our math board. So that is going to be there for you to reference throughout the next few lessons. So if you want to use that, that is there. That is a tool for you, and I want to make sure you use it. Going to go ahead and get started. On Canvas, under My Learning, I guess I'll just go through it with you guys. On Canvas for Math, under Learn, and then you're going to go down to Place Value in Decimals. That's where we're going to be at right now. Place values in decimals. The lesson starts us off with a 15-minute video, and I'm not going to play that for you because it's just very long, and I'm assuming it's not that interesting. And you'd rather watch me, right? Right? All right. Gonna let you guys watch that on your own if you want to watch it. Again, you don't have to. I'm going to go to the next slide, though, here. So this is where I want to talk to you guys at when we're talking about decimals. So what is a decimal? Okay, a decimal is not just a number past a dot. A decimal number is a number that has a part of a whole value. So similar to a fraction, a decimal is part of a whole. And the decimal values do come to the right of the decimal point dot. And if you look at this image that I have up here on my screen, we're going to use these images to kind of help us with identifying different decimal values. So if you want to do me a favor and get out your clean slate, you guys should have a clean slate. And if not, feel free to pause the video, guest teacher, to have the students get a clean slate. Their clean slate is going to be, they're going to need the one that has the blank 100 grid. If you do not have a blank 100 grid on it, feel free to give the extra cutouts to students to put in their clean slates. But we're going to be working with identifying different place value or different decimals visually with our 100 grid. So make sure you have this with you. And we're going to be talking about how those decimals are represented on grids. Okay. So when you look at a decimal grid like this one, this big main square on the outside of it, that's going to represent one whole. One whole dollar, one whole candy bar, one whole puppy. I mean, whatever you want to think of it as, it's one whole. Okay. When we start looking at those smaller squares, or maybe even like the longer rectangles within this larger square, those are part of a whole. Those are sections of the whole, pieces of the whole. So, for example, on this large square, I only have one minuscule, tiny square colored in. I know that within this larger square, there's 100 of these little squares. How do I know there's 100? Well, I have 10 on top, 10 on the side. 10 times 10 is 100. So I have 100 of these small squares, and when I only have one of them filled in, that means that I have 1/100th, okay? That means I'm going to have, let's see if I can flip this over, one of those little squares colored in means I have 1/100th, okay? Now, thinking back to our decimal place value, I have 0. The next place value is my tenths, past my decimal. The next place value is my hundredths. Okay. The one after that is thousandths. And so on. Well, if I have 1/100th shown on that grid that just had one of these little boxes shaded in, that means I have 1/100th of my whole. As a fraction, I have 1/100th, but I can write that as a decimal as 1/100th as well. And that's going to be represented as 0.01 because this 1 is in the hundredths place value, the second spot over from the decimal. Okay? With that, if it says show me, yeah, it's going to tell you 1 out of 100. The fraction is 1/100th of the whole. Going to my next section of campus. Now if we look at this grid again, not only do we have those little dots, those little squares, we also have longer squares. And I'm going to actually go back to my clean slate for this because it's easier for me to explain it on a clean slate than it is on the computer. So if I have 100 of these big dots, or these little dots, if I want to break these up into bigger chunks, I can have longer rectangles and fill this in. Okay. Now, I'm going to have 10 of these rectangles going across. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, here's one of those, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So that means if I shade just one of these in, that is representative of 1/10 because I have 1 out of 10 of those rectangles shaded of my whole. So I can write that as a fraction as 1/10, or I can write that as a decimal as 0.1 because this 1 is in the tenths place. Okay? So we are going to go and look at some more of these examples, and you're going to do some of them with me while I pause the video. This is something that I want to talk about here real quick before I move on from here. Boys and girls, if I have a fraction, like 1/10 here, for example, and I add a 0 after it, that does not change the value of that decimal. If I add 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I could add an infinite number of zeros to the right of my decimal point, and it's not going to change the value. That's still representing only 1/10. If I had, for example, let me erase this. If I had 0.23, and I just had a bunch of zeros after that, that still is equal to 23/100ths. It doesn't change the value. So if you have a decimal with zeros at the end, it's still going to be the same as if there were not any zeros there to begin with. Okay, that's one thing I want to make sure I tell you about because I'm not filling in any more pieces of that whole. Those are just kind of place fillers. Okay. So with that being said, now I'm going to have our guest teacher work with us and pause the video as you work on your clean slate to review some of these decimal activities. So you're going to use your clean slate, and there are going to be values represented in word form here. So for example, here I have 2/10 and 4/100ths. I'm going to show you what I want you to do for this one, and then our guest teacher is going to show you the rest, or do the rest with you. I'm sorry. So I have 2/10 and 4/100ths. You are going to use your clean slate, and you're going to make sure you're using the one with the grid sheet on it, okay? And, you're going to say, okay, 2/10 and 4/100ths. You're going to click that, or you're going to try to draw what 2/10 and 4/100ths is on here. Okay, well, here's 2 1/10, 2/10, and now I need 4/100ths. Fill those in, okay? Then you are going to have the guest teacher pause the video, and then you are going to show your work with your friends, have a conversation about it. Then the guest teacher is going to play the video, and we will be able to identify what the actual amount was. And then I also want you to look at the decimal value. Okay, so for this one, you're going to have 4/10 and 0/100ths. You are going to have the guest teacher in a second pause the video. you are going to represent what 4/10 and 0/100 looks like on your clean slate, and you're going to write down the decimal, and then you're going to share and discuss with your partner or someone sitting next to you, and then the guest teacher is going to unpause the video to see what the work is. All right, go ahead and pause now. All right, so looking at our answer, our model is 4/10, so I have 4 rows shaded in, and my decimal is 0.4 or 0.40. As long as that 4 is in the 10th place, it's all that matters. All right, guest teacher, go ahead and pause it and have the students work on 5/10 and 2/100. All right, hopefully you had a chance to share with your partner or someone sitting next to you. The 5/10 and 2/100 model should look like this on your clean slate. 5 rows of 10 shaded in and 2 mini squares, the hundredths, shaded in. Your decimal should be 0.52. 52 hundredths, 2 is in the hundredths place. All right, guest teacher, go ahead and pause for 1/10 and 9/100. All right, now that you had a chance to talk with a partner and show your clean slate work, 1/10 and 9/100 is going to look like this. So I have 110 shaded in and 9 little boxes shaded in for the hundredths. And my decimal is going to be 0.19 because I'm going to end with my 9 in the hundredths place. Last one. Oh, this one's going to be hard to model. You might have to do some drawing on your clean slate because I didn't give you enough grids for this. Try to draw and write down 1 whole and 3/10 and 7/100. Go ahead and pause. All right, so looking at that, you may have had to do some drawing, friends. You're going to have 1 whole box, then 3/10 and 7/100 shaded in. Your decimal should have looked like 1.37, where you have 1 whole and then 3/7 as my decimal. All right, moving on to our next slide. I am going to have you guys answer this question on your clean slate. It says, do you know how to say this number? Write down how you think you should say it in words, and then click on the answer button to see if it was correct. So using your clean slate, I want you to write down how you would say that number in words. Our guest teacher is going to pause the video. You can have a conversation. Then they're going to unpause the video so we can see the answer. All right, the answer is 23 and 791 thousandths. Whenever you see the decimal, that's when you say the word and, okay? And you always want to end stating the place value your last digit is in. So my 1's in the thousandths place value. That's why I ended off with 791 thousandths. Okay, moving on. Now this one, I'm going to have my guest teacher, again, work on pausing and playing for you guys. I want you to write down what place value each one of these digits is in on your clean slate. So you're going to pause it and write down what place value your 1, 2, 7, and 9 is in. All right, now that you wrote down what place value your 1, 2, 7, and 9 was in, let's go ahead and check. 1 is in the tenths or 1/10 place. 2 is in the ones place. 7 is in the hundredths place. And 9 is in the thousandths place. All right, 5th graders, now you have this activity sheet that I want you to work on. I left copies for our guest teacher to hand out to you guys. It looks like this, okay? So you have a number given to you, and I want you to write down the place value that each digit is in, okay? So 3 is in my ones place value. 1 is in my tenths place value, okay? You're going to complete this and turn it in for me. Again, if you need help, I do have my place value chart over there on the board or on the bulletin board, and I'm sure our guest teacher would be happy to help you as well. All right, that's it for my math lesson. Thanks for working with me. I can't wait to see you this afternoon.